Welcome to Life Stories, where every journey is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Today, we share the inspiring story of Sarah, a janitor's daughter who dared to dream beyond the life she knew. From the shadows of doubt to the spotlight of recognition, Sarah's passion for the violin and her unwavering determination lead her on a path she never imagined. This is more than just a story about music, it's about courage, perseverance, and the power of believing in yourself. Stay tuned to hear how Sarah's dreams unfold. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and start the journey today. I still remember the day as if it happened only yesterday. The day when my dream, something I'd kept buried deep inside for years, was mocked openly by those I least expected. The day when my life, in all its quiet pain and yearning, shifted with a single stroke of the bow. It was a talent show at my high school, a place where I had always felt out of place. I wasn't like the other students, with their bright clothes and their even brighter futures. I was the janitor's daughter, known to most only as the girl who cleaned the classrooms after school. My shoes were worn down from the hours I spent on my feet, sweeping hallways and scrubbing floors, while my father, the janitor, worked tirelessly to maintain the school's dull, sterile image. But there was more to me than the tired look I carried. More than the broken violin tucked away under my bed. There was music I taught myself to play in secret. Music that lived inside me in a way I couldn't explain. I loved it. It was all I had. When the talent show was announced, I hadn't even considered joining. I wasn't part of the music program. I had never been given the chance to learn. The violin I played was an old one my father found for me in a dusty storage closet. He'd fixed it up with nothing but tape and a prayer. It was an imperfect instrument, just like me, but it was mine, my own. Still, the idea of performing, of stepping onto that stage where everyone could see me, where everyone could judge me, it felt impossible. It seemed like a fantasy. The kind of fantasy reserved for those who belonged. For those with the right clothes, the right background. But one teacher, Ms. Anderson, had other plans. During rehearsal, with a smirk on her face, she said, "Why don't we let Sarah play something?" Her words, though light in tone, carried an air of mockery that I could sense even before the laughter started. The other teachers exchanged amused glances, their eyes filled with unspoken judgment. I wasn't one of them, and they knew it. I felt my heart race as they called my name. The laughter that filled the room before my performance was suffocating. I could hear the whispers, the mocking comments from students who had never once looked at me with kindness. What could I possibly do? They must have thought, with my worn shoes, my raggedy violin, and my father's faded janitor uniform? Their laughter echoed in my ears as I slowly made my way to the stage. I stepped forward, the polished floor creaking under my feet, and took my place at the center of the stage. My fingers trembled as I gripped the violin, the bow heavier than I remembered. The auditorium was filled with a crowd of teachers and students who didn't see me. Not really. They saw only what I was supposed to be, a janitor's daughter. Out of place, beneath them. But in that moment, I wasn't just a daughter of a cleaner. I was a musician. My heart beat in sync with the rhythm of the music I had practiced in secret. The music that spoke of longing and quiet determination. I breathed in deep, closed my eyes, and let the first note escape. The moment I drew the bow across the strings, everything changed. The laughter died, as if swallowed by the music itself. The air around me seemed to shift. There was a deep, haunting melody that filled the room, so rich, so full of emotion, that it didn't just fill the space, it consumed it. It was not just sound, it was a story being told in each and every note. I had spent years alone, teaching myself what I could in empty rooms, in corners no one cared to look at. But now, the music was no longer a secret, it was my truth. My voice. The teachers who had laughed, who had doubted, now exchanged looks of disbelief. The students, who once whispered cruel jokes behind their hands, now sat frozen, unable to speak. Even the principal, who had been checking his watch just moments ago, leaned forward, his attention now solely on me. The world fell away, leaving only the sound of my violin, my story, and the emotions that I had poured into every single note. For those few minutes, I was no longer just the janitor's daughter. I was a person, a soul who had something to say. And they were listening. The applause that followed, though I hadn't expected it, seemed to carry with it the weight of all those years of silence and rejection. It was louder than anything I had ever heard before. And it was mine. It was the moment I had always dreamed of, though not in the way I had imagined. I was frozen. The applause, the cheering, it all felt like a dream. Something I had never thought would happen. I had expected mockery, laughter, maybe even humiliation. But this was something else entirely. My chest rose and fell with heavy breaths as I stood there. My violin still nestled beneath my chin. I didn't know what to do. Didn't know whether to smile, to cry, or to run away and hide. In the midst of all that noise, there was a calmness, a feeling of disbelief settled over me. Like I had just done something I could hardly understand myself. I looked around the room, my eyes falling first on the teachers. Ms. Anderson, who had suggested I play, was the first to look away. Her face a mix of surprise and regret. The laughter that had once echoed through the auditorium now felt distant, as if it had never really happened. Then I saw him, my father, standing at the edge of the stage. His janitor uniform barely visible behind the curtain. His grip on his mop handle was tight, his fingers white from the pressure. But his face was full of pride. It wasn't the kind of pride I had ever seen from him before. It wasn't the usual quiet acceptance of his life, of the path he had carved for himself. This was different. This was pride in me. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. I had always known he believed in me, but seeing it in his eyes, it was more than just words. He had watched me for years, always encouraging me, telling me that my music had something special, that it was a magic no one else could understand. But I had never truly believed him. Not until now. As the applause slowly faded, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find Ms. Anderson standing beside me, her eyes wide with shock. Her usual stern demeanor had softened, and there was something in her voice that I hadn't heard before. Respect. You need to audition for the Manhattan Conservatory of Music," she said, her words coming out slowly, almost in disbelief. "You have talent, real talent." The words seemed to hang in the air, but I couldn't process them. Audition for the Manhattan Conservatory? The idea felt absurd. I was a janitor's daughter. I wasn't meant for a place like that. I didn't belong there. "I can't," I whispered, the doubt that had plagued me for years creeping into my voice. "I can't afford it. I don't have the resources." Ms. Anderson didn't even seem to hear me. She just stood there, staring at me as if I were the only person in the room. "You have more than just skill, Sarah," she said firmly. "You have something special. You're the most talented student I've ever heard. You have to audition." I felt my throat tighten. The dream of being a part of something bigger, of stepping into a world I had always watched from afar, suddenly felt within reach. But I knew the cost. The lessons, the auditions, their world was not a world for someone like me. That's when I heard it, a voice from the back of the room, cutting through the quiet murmur of conversation. "I'll pay for her audition," the voice said. A silence fell over the auditorium, thick and heavy, as everyone turned to see who had spoken. My heart skipped a beat when I saw him, a tall man dressed in a sharp navy suit, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed back. His presence was commanding, almost as if the room itself had shifted to make space for him. It was Daniel Whitmore. The name meant nothing to me at first, but I could see the recognition in the teacher's eyes. Whitmore was one of the most renowned violinists in the country, a Juilliard graduate, a former concertmaster, and now a music patron who scouted for talent. He had given up his seat to stand, walking toward me with a steady, purposeful stride. "Mr. Whitmore," Ms. Anderson said in awe, her voice shaking slightly. "You're here?" Whitmore nodded, his eyes never leaving me. "I was supposed to leave an hour ago. he said softly, a faint smile on his lips. But when I heard someone tuning a violin backstage, I thought it was a recording. Then she started playing, and I knew I had to see for myself. The weight of his words sank in. He had heard me, and he wanted to help. Consider the audition fees taken care of, he continued, his voice calm but filled with authority. If she's willing to take the leap, I'll support her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A renowned violinist offering to pay for my audition? The thought was surreal, like a fantasy one had never dared to dream. But there it was, standing before me, as real as the violin in my hands. I don't know what to say, I whispered, my heart racing. Say yes, Mr. Whitmore urged gently. I glanced at my father, standing quietly at the side of the stage. His face filled with concern but also a glimmer of hope. He had always been my biggest supporter. The one person who never doubted me, even when I doubted myself. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I knew what I had to do. If I had ever needed encouragement, it was in this moment. My father gave me a small nod. If this is what you want, Sarah, you should go for it. And for the first time, I didn't hesitate. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe in the possibility of something greater. Yes, I said, my voice steady now. I'll do it. The applause that followed was louder, more intense than anything I had ever experienced. This wasn't just for me. This was a moment of triumph, of breaking through barriers, of showing the world that sometimes dreams don't just belong to the privileged, they belong to anyone who dares to chase them. It was hard to believe that everything had changed so quickly. Just hours before, I had been the quiet janitor's daughter, standing in the shadows of a world that had always felt out of reach. But now, as I stood at the edge of the stage, surrounded by the hum of whispers and the weight of the world on my shoulders, I realized that something truly extraordinary had begun. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. There were forms to fill out, questions to answer, and most importantly, preparations to make. Daniel Whitmore had made good on his promise. My audition for the prestigious Whitmore Conservatory of Music was set, and he had arranged everything, from the fees to the travel expenses. All I had to do was show up and play. The reality of it all was both thrilling and terrifying. I had always dreamed of being a part of something bigger, but now that it was happening, I wasn't sure I was ready. I had taught myself to play in secret, in the quiet solitude of my small room, where no one could hear my mistakes, where no one could judge me. But this was different. I would be playing for people who had trained their whole lives. People who understood music in ways I could never imagine. The first day I arrived at the conservatory, I felt like an outsider. The students walking the halls seemed so confident, so sure of themselves. They were poised, polished, and effortlessly talented. I, on the other hand, felt like a child in a grown-up world. My fingers trembled as I clutched my violin, and my heart raced in my chest. But there was no turning back. This was the chance I had fought for. The chance to prove that my dreams weren't just dreams, they were something worth pursuing. The first few weeks were a blur of intense lessons and even more intense practice sessions. Professor Callahan, one of the most respected violin instructors at the conservatory, was tough. He pushed me harder than I had ever been pushed before, demanding precision, technique, and emotion all at once. I was used to playing from my heart, letting the music flow through me. But here, I was expected to perform with perfect form, with a level of skill I had never had the opportunity to develop before. My fingers ached constantly. My back ached from the hours I spent hunched over my violin, trying to perfect each movement. I wanted to quit. I wanted to run away and return to the life I had known, where I didn't have to live up to anyone's expectations. But then I thought about my father, about all the sacrifices he had made for me. I thought about the quiet nights we spent together, him telling me that I was special, that I could do anything if I put my heart into it. I thought about the moment I had played on that stage, when the world had listened. I couldn't quit. I wouldn't quit. And so, I kept practicing. I stayed up late into the night, memorizing sheet music, focusing on each note, every movement of my bow. Slowly, I began to improve. My intonation became sharper, my bowing smoother, and with each small improvement, my confidence grew. It was still hard, it was still exhausting, but there was something inside me, something deep, something fierce, that kept me going. One day, after a particularly grueling practice session, Professor Callahan stood up from his desk and walked over to me. "You play with feeling, Sarah," he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft, "but your technique needs refinement. We'll fix that." His words, though critical, felt like a victory. It was the first time I had heard him acknowledge that I had something special. It wasn't just about playing the violin anymore. It was about learning to refine my talent. About facing the fears and doubts that had always held me back. It was about realizing that I wasn't just a janitor's daughter anymore. I was a musician, and for the first time, I believed it. The weeks passed in a blur of practice, lessons, and small victories, but soon enough, it was time for the annual showcase. The moment when the best students performed for an audience of talent scouts, composers, and industry professionals. I had been here for a short time, and the pressure was immense. Could I really be ready for something like this? Would I be good enough? "You should audition, Sarah," Daniel Whitmore said, his voice steady and confident as always. "You have more than just skills. You have something that can't be taught." My father, who had always been my biggest supporter, shared the same sentiment. "You've never backed down before," he said. "Don't start now." With a deep breath, I signed up, and as the night of the showcase arrived, I realized that the only thing left to do was to trust myself. To play from my heart, just as I always had. And as I stepped onto that stage, I knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. The night of the showcase arrived quicker than I had imagined, and as I stepped onto the stage, everything seemed to blur around me. The spotlight shone down, and for a moment, I was frozen with the weight of expectations, with the knowledge that this was the moment that could change everything. My eyes scanned the room, and I saw familiar faces, the teachers who had once doubted me, the students who had dismissed me, and then, in the front row, my father, his eyes filled with pride and nervous anticipation. I lifted my violin and positioned it carefully beneath my chin. The music began as soon as my bow touched the strings. For the first time in my life, I didn't hesitate. Every note, every movement of my bow, was an expression of everything I had ever felt: the struggles, the triumphs, the years of hidden practice in the shadows of my small room. As the final note lingered in the air, the silence was almost deafening. But when the applause erupted, it was more than just a reaction to the music. It was an acknowledgement of the journey I had taken, the strength I had found in myself, and the dreams I had dared to chase. I had done it. I had not just played the violin. I had stepped into a new world. A world where my dreams were no longer out of reach. And for the first time, I truly believed in the power of perseverance. If you've enjoyed Sarah's journey, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring life stories.